What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny and Bush coming at you with episode 41 of Dynasty Decisions. If you guys are new around here, this is where we take your Dynasty questions, your rookie draft questions, trade questions, am I rebuilding, am I contending type of questions, and we help you guys make those decisions, hence the name Dynasty Decisions. So if you guys want to be a part of future episodes, our patrons get first priority. You can find the link down below, patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange, but you can also reach out to us on Twitter or on Discord. Both links are in the description for that as well if you want to be on an episode of Dynasty Decisions in the future. But before we get into it, Danny, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. And yeah, it's been a few weeks since we've been putting out some Dynasty Decisions that we know a lot of you guys have been on the back burners for a while. So just want to say we appreciate you guys for being patient with us. Again, very hectic few week stretch with the NFL draft, with Easter, and just a lot of the content that we've been pushing out. So shout out for you guys for being patient in that regard. But just ready to get the series back underground. I mean, obviously, you guys have shown a ton of support for the series since we first introduced it. And heck, I love making these videos. You love making these videos, and we're going to keep pushing this content out for you guys.
Yep, of course. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there.
Amen.
If you're a mother listening to this, if you got a wife or a mother, obviously say Happy Mother's Day to those people as well. But like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. Now let's hit the intro.
Okay, so the first team of the video is actually going to be from Angantyr, and as you guys can see, the team here is a 12-team Superflex tight end premium with 4 IDP spots, also being a half PPR. So the main piece on the team, as you see, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson, Jameis Winston, running backs, J.K. Dobbins, etc. Wide receivers, Gabe Davis, Ayuk, Elijah Moore, a nice little young building block there. Tight ends, Pat Freiermuth, Hunter Henry, etc., as well as 2022, all of his picks being in an auction draft, and 2023, him having an extra first. So overall, I mean, he also outlines here that he did trade Keenan Allen and Dallas Goedert for Hunter Henry, a first and a second. He says here, "Hey, I was hoping to be on the next episode of Dynasty Decisions. This is my first startup, and I saw straight away that I could not compete first year." What did he do when he noticed that? He traded, as I mentioned, Keenan Allen and Goddard for Hunter Henry and what he expects to be a 2023 mid-first and a 2024 second. He basically wants to know what type of moves we should do now because he wants to try to make his competing window in 2023. So overall, we'll talk about the trade first and then kind of get into some strategy to help you build this team out. But what are your thoughts on this trade?
Yeah, I like the trade if you're going to, shift away, obviously, from more of a competing window to a rebuilding window. So I think you got good value there. Keenan Allen, to me, is worth about, a late first-round pick. And the fact that you got a likely mid-first-round pick to down tier from Goddard to Henry, and then you also pick up a second. So I like that trade. The 2022 draft is definitely interesting. I believe Angantyr actually asked us how to handle an auction draft a couple weeks ago. And we have never been in an auction rookie draft before, so we couldn't, give you a straight answer. But I would say I'm not exactly sure how it works. If you have like a budget of some kind, I would be targeting like the undervalued, rebuilding type of assets. So if you can get a value on a guy like Jameson Williams to add to this team because he's injured, he'd be the type of guy that I'd be targeting. I would not spend any money on Breece Hall or Kenneth Walker because you're in a rebuilding window, obviously, and you don't want to add running backs to your team. And also, those guys are going to go for a lot because they're running backs also. So I'd be looking to target some undervalued wide receivers in your auction draft, probably Jameson Williams, Chris Olave, Sky Moore, Jahan Dotson, David Bell, guys like that. I would take a swing at the big guys, Drake London, Treylon Burks, and Garrett Wilson. But if they're going for too much, then obviously pivot to those second tier guys.
Yep, no, I like it as well. And I would say in that position, I mean, you have a nice nucleus of young wide receivers they could build around, obviously, with, Davis, Ayuk, and more in particular. Yeah, just keep adding to that. Obviously, you kind of mentioned with that 2022 class. In terms of trying to compete in 2023, you would probably need a lot to follow your way, in my opinion, because, again, we wouldn't advocate for spending capital on the running back position this year, given the fact that we want to build that nucleus. And I don't necessarily believe that you're going to have, a rookie year running back right off the bat be able to carry you and the rest of your team to gold. So I would mostly say this is more so a 2024 retool. Once you get that 2023 capital added, those players develop by the time they're in their second year. And obviously these young receivers that you have develop into their prime. That would be about the timeline, I would say, where you would contend.
Yeah, I'd say you'd have to get pretty lucky with your 2023 picks. So it's like
Yeah,
if you get one that's early and you get, Gibbs and Sean Tucker with your 2023 first, like they'd have to be studs their rookie season, like Danny
yeah,
said, for you to be able to compete. And also you'd have to have, everything break right with the rest of your roster as well. So I would say you're on the right track. You're definitely building out
100%.
a pretty solid nucleus here. I would, again, look to sell some of your competing pieces during the season, most likely, like CEH, Brandon Cooks, Jameis Winston, maybe if somebody wants to bite on him. I'd be looking to sell those guys, maybe Hunter Henry as well during the season, and try and get as many second round picks as you can for pieces like that.
Yep, no, I absolutely agree there. But either way, moving off of Angantyr's team, we can transition to the next team. That's going to be from Chief Sharkbait, actually a member of our Tone Setter startup that we are currently in right now. A little shout out. He wanted us to basically review his team. He had a team for us here. So you guys can see here, headline the quarterback position, you got Drew Lock and Patrick Mahomes. At the running back position, you see Cam Akers, Kenyon Drake, Travis Etienne, etc. Wide receivers, this is where you get the big boy. You got Justin Jefferson heading that group, along with guys like Michael Thomas, Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, etc. Tight end, you have Mark Andrews, along with a boatload of picks this year. So there weren't really any exact questions here, but in terms of him listing the picks there, I'm assuming he kind of wants a guide as to how he can spend his draft capital this year. So if we're talking that, I mean, that 105, myself and Corey are kind of in agreement that 105's got to be taken best player available. We currently have that top 5 tier, the 2 running backs with Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, as well as those top 3 receivers with, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, and Treylon Burks. So that 105 should be spent over there. In terms of your other picks, I would actually look to see if I can maneuver up the board. We've kind of said that 111 spot is the dead point, if you will, in drafts this year. If you could package, the 111 and the 206, or the 111 and the 211 and maybe a future third or something, and move up into that top 8 or so area where, you can still get a guy like Chris Olave. You can still get a guy like Sky Moore. You can still get a guy like Jameson Williams at that point. That would kind of be my plan of action with this team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably comfortable just hanging at the 111 and letting Jahan Dotson fall, most likely, because he typically does fall that far.
That's fair.
But yeah, overall, I think with the 111, I'm looking towards a wide receiver, whether it is
100%.
Dotson, whether it's David Bell, whether it's Christian Watson, or like Danny said, you want to take your 111 and your 211 and your 212 or something, maneuver up to 106, 107 or something like that, and secure one of those second tier wide receivers. If you stay and stick and pick at 111, 206, 211, 212. I would say that's going to be the sweet spot for guys like Wan'Dale Robinson, John Mechie, Jalen Tolbert,
Yep.
or Alec Pierce for one or two of those picks. And then I'd probably be looking towards one of those day 3 running backs with good opportunity, like Dameon Pierce, like Tyler Algier, like Isaiah Spiller, and maybe Rashad White's there at 206 or something like that. That's probably how I'd be looking to fill out this team. He listed the team alphabetically. I mean, he's still got a pretty good nucleus. If it is a super flex league, then you're a little bit, hamstrung at the quarterback position. At the 111, Kenny Pickett would definitely be, worth that pick as well if you wanted to go in that direction, or if you wanted to maybe move up a spot or 2 to secure Kenny Pickett. I wouldn't hate that either.
Yep, no, for sure. Again, we're assuming it's a super flex, but if it's a one quarterback, obviously take that with a grain of salt. But either way, I mean, this team is very well set up for the future and for the short term. I mean, having Patrick Mahomes as your main piece is obviously a nice little leverage piece, if you will, there at the quarterback position. And then you have a strong nucleus at the flex positions, not to mention having a top 2 tight end in fantasy. So overall, good pathing there. I like where you're at. We can transition to the next team. That's going to be from Bryan Harris, another patron. I'll let you take it away with Brian's team.
Yeah, so with Brian's team, you guys can see it there, 12-team, super flex, half PPR. You got Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, Trey Lance, pretty solid quarterback core there, if I do say so myself. J.K. Dobbins, Kareem Hunt, Tyler Algier, etc. Deontay Johnson, Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman, Brandon Ayuk, David Bell, etc. at wide receiver. T.J. Hawkinson at tight end also has pretty much all of his picks going into the future. He basically said his roster's, about a top 4 team in the league, 4th best roster in the league after the rookie draft and after the trade that he made and the picks that he made in the rookie draft. So he said his roster is by far the youngest of the contending teams. So most likely they have, Travis Kelce types and, a bit of older players. His question basically is that should he ride this year out and try, moving some of his older pieces, or should he try and, contend this season and try and win it all. So let's review what he did with his rookie picks. I really love what he did with his rookie picks here. 105, instead of, stick and picking and picking a player, he actually traded the 105 away for Elijah Moore and Kareem Hunt. Now, Elijah Moore versus, Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson is quite close in my rankings. But the fact that you got Kareem Hunt on top of that for a team that probably could compete if things break right for you, I think that's a pretty solid move there. And then obviously the other two picks are just great values. 208 getting David Bell. Again, I think he should be off the board. 201, 202 at the latest. Late first round is where I actually have him ranked. And then 305, Tyler Algier, who I have ranked as my 17th overall player. So he's a guy that I would take in the mid-second round. You got him in the mid-third.
Yeah, I mean, can we quick? I mean, all of them are great values, but I'm just trying to baffle or trying to wrap my head around the fact that it seems like there's such a buying window for Elijah Moore right now. Like, I've seen trades on Twitter, I've seen trades on other podcasts, I've seen trades from you guys asking me in my DMs about what Elijah Moore's value is. And I'll tell you right now, I mean, you mentioned the 105 here. I would rather Elijah Moore over Kenneth Walker in my rankings if I was in a draft right now. So that should tell you that I actually prefer Elijah Moore to the 105. So the fact that you got Elijah Moore and Kareem Hunt for the 105, taking advantage of that buyer's kind of uncertainty, if you will, if somebody had invested in Elijah Moore, given the fact that they invested Garrett Wilson, 10th overall pick. Phenomenal move there. We don't really need to say much about David Bell. You guys would have seen our wide receiver rankings. This is a guy we're comfortable taking at the back of the first round. So 208, absolute robbery. And then Tyler Algier, I mean, you're getting a potential starting running back year one in the mid-third round of your draft.
Yeah, for sure. So as far as his other questions are concerned, he asked basically, should I move some of my veteran pieces and, make this team really, really well suited to compete in 2023? Or should I, sell future picks and try and compete this year? So the latter I would not do. I almost pretty much never advocate for doing that unless you're absolutely loaded at every position, because there's so much variance in fantasy football. Even if you're a playoff team, there's no guarantee that you're going to win the championship. So I would say that I would take the first option. If you want to go into this season, you can play with house money this year. You got a young team that could compete if things break right. But if they don't break right, you still have a young team. You're still going to be well set up in the future. So if you get to mid-season and, you're an average team in your league and you want to sell Kareem Hunt, you want to sell Tyler Lockett, you want to sell maybe Kenny Galladay's having a bounce back season or something like that, and you can get a future second round pick, or you can package a couple of those guys and get a future first or something like that, I would definitely be willing to do something like that, because you should be well set up to compete 2023 and beyond. Like you said, of the top 4 rosters in your league, you definitely have the youngest team as well. So I'd probably, again, just play with house money this year. I also wouldn't hate the idea, because I always talk about this, Danny and I kind of disagree on this premise, but I don't really like having 3 elite quarterbacks. I like having 2 elite quarterbacks and 1 solid quarterback as my QB3, because, Trey Lance, if he's a stud this year, isn't going to see the field for your dynasty team, because you have Watson and Kyler Murray, assuming Watson doesn't get suspended. So, Trey Lance, Deshaun Watson, one of those guys, I'd float and trade offers, see what you can net for them in a trade. If you can tear down from Trey Lance to Zach Wilson and get a 2023 first and a small piece, like, Amon-Ra St. Brown owner is like really upset with him or something like that, maybe you have to throw a pick back their way to even it out. But if you can do something like that, downgrade your QB3, still get a solid QB3, and maybe pick up a first rounder and a small piece on top of it, I'm definitely looking to do something like that, because like I said, I'm not the biggest proponent of having 3 elite quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, the counter I would have to that is I'm fine with it if I'm not going all in. The reason being is, if I'm not going all in, I want to hold as much value on my team as possible. Once you're ready to compete, and once you realize, okay, I don't realistically need this 3rd elite quarterback, that's when you can go all in. I mean, realistically here, if you can see yourself, flipping, as I mentioned, or as you mentioned, Trey Lance for Zach Wilson, and maybe a first round pick, or maybe a good young veteran piece, maybe something like that to help take you over the top when you're ready to contend, that's when I'm starting to float it out. But when I'm in a, pseudo rebuild or pseudo retool, and I don't necessarily need to quote unquote spread that value amongst my roster, I'm fine with just holding that valuable piece. I mean, as we know, aside from 2023 first being a gold mine, the other main gold mine in fantasy is young superstar potential quarterback. So, I mean, once you're ready to compete and you can transition, as Corey said, Trey Lance into Zach Wilson plus, I would say that's more so a 2023 type of question for you. Again, this team, you could easily turn around by then. I would say. I mean, you're in a good spot now. Add another 2023 first. Maybe when you're ready to compete at that point, flip Trey Lance to, as Corey said, Zach Wilson plus, Derek Carr plus, something like that. Plus, I can see this team competing by 2023. Yes.
Yeah, and it also kind of mitigates the risk that we're hearing about Trey Lance right now, which is making me a little nervous. I'm not
I'm
going to
not
lie.
nervous.
The fact that the 49ers camp is saying, they should have never spent this pick on him or he's behind it, like it's making me a little nervous. I will say, I don't think it's a slam dunk that he becomes an elite quarterback. I do think I'd still bet on it happening, but I am, wondering that if you have a team like this and you want to cash out on, Trey Lance's potential being the reason he's being drafted so high, then it definitely makes some sense for a team like this. So let's move on to the next team here. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, for sure. So the next team here is actually going to be from Briana. So she actually sent this via email. It says a 10-team, 2-quarterback league, 2 wide receivers, running back, and a flex. So overall, she also says here that the max roster, she's currently at 34 out of 30. So she has to make 4 decisions in terms of her roster to cut down. And her rookie draft was a 4-round rookie draft that was snake. So overall, she lists her team here and some trades she made, and also has a couple questions. So looking at the team, Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, and then a logjam of, Drew Lock, Davis Mills, etc. there. Running back, you got DeAndre Swift, Austin Eckler, Dalvin Cook, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I mean, a lot of starting caliber running backs on this team. Wide receivers, Deontay Johnson, Elijah Moore, Amon St. Brown. Not much at wide receiver apart from those 3. And then a tight end, I mean, Logan Thomas, you're kind of hoping the corpse of him does end up coming back to fruition, which I don't think I'd bank on. But either way, let's look at the deals. You sent away Dak Prescott, George Kittle, Alvin Kamara, and Jordan Love in exchange for Kyler Murray, Amon St. Brown, CEH, a first rounder this year, 108, the 203 this year, as well as a 2023 second. So looking at this team, what are your thoughts here? Or
I
trade?
really like getting Kyler Murray for sure. He's definitely an up tier from Dak Prescott. I'm trying to equate Kyler Murray's value relative to Dak here within this trade. Like I would say Kyler Murray and one of the seconds or something is worth Dak and Kamara or Dak and Kittle. Like that's probably the way I would look at it.
That's fair.
And then
203.
Amon Ra is a nice piece to acquire. I'm just never gonna want to acquire CEH, so I kind of just view him as a throw-in. But maybe that's how the opposing manager viewed him as well. Overall, I like the trade. I think you got
Yep.
good value, especially considering you're kind of transitioning some of those win now running back pieces like Kamara and like your tight end and Kittle into some more young pieces. So I do like that first trade. Obviously, it kind of takes you out of a competitive window for the most part, because had you had Dak, Kittle, and Kamara, you'd probably be a little bit more competitive this year. But I do like the trade overall.
Yep. No, I agree. The next trade she listed here are so she sent away Brandon Ayuk and Tyler Boyd in exchange for Davis Mills and AJ Dillon. So what are your thoughts on this deal?
I think Ayuk is the best player in the deal,
Yes.
which kind of leans me towards that side of it. But it's all going to hinge on what happens with Davis Mills, because if Davis Mills turns into a starting quarterback for the next couple of years, then you rob this person blind. But I think Ayuk versus Dillon, I would definitely lean with Ayuk in that kind of discussion there, especially knowing that a wide receiver, you don't have the most plentiful group there. I probably lean with the Ayuk side for now, but it hinges on Davis Mills potentially working out as a starter.
Yeah, I don't mind the move. And she also asked here in terms of her rookie draft, what she should do. So as you see the picks there, 106, 108, 202, 203, 205, 306, and 405 this year. She kind of mentions a strategy where she wants to go wide receiver heavy with maybe a tight end sprinkled in there. I would agree with that, man. Honestly, if we're looking at it, 106, 108, take your pick. Chris Olave, Sky Moore, Jameson Williams, Jahan Dotson. Mix, pick and choose who you want. 2 of those guys mix into that 106, 108. I have no problems with. In terms of 202 and 203, again, I would most likely just go best wide receiver available, unless, I think James Cook's most likely going to go high in your league because, in general, people are going to see the
It
Buffalo
is a
landing spot.
10-teamer too. So that 202 and 203 is more like the 112 and
That is
201.
very
So
true.
you should be able to get potentially, if you go, and I will always advocate for Jameson Williams if you're a rebuilding team as the 106. So if you're a rebuilding team, Jameson Williams would be the highest of the second tier wide receivers for me, because long term you don't have as much to worry about there. So if you go Jameson Williams at 106, say you go Sky Moore, Chris Olave at 108, there's a chance Jahan Dotson might be there for you at 202
That is
because
very
people
fair.
are scared of Jahan Dotson, the Washington Commanders. And if you could somehow turn that 202 and 203 into Jahan Dotson and David Bell, then that would be awesome. And then at 205, like you said,
Trey McBride.
I don't think it's too early for Trey McBride. It's a 10-team league, so it might be a little early, but I do think he would really, really help your tight end core. And it's not like we're talking about,
Yeah.
passing on elite prospects here at 205.
Like again, be wary if David Bell is on the board. Obviously, don't force the pick, but I'm fine with taking Trey McBride in your situation because people are gonna say, "Well, you don't pick for need." Well, I think McBride has kind of earned his place into that tier with the Wandales, the Mechis, the day 3 running backs. I think McBride is a good enough tight end prospect that you're not forcing a need at that pick. You're just kind of picking within the tier. So if you wanted to go with McBride at 205, again, pending if a guy like David Bell is off the board, I don't mind allocating that pick there. So
I also don't
overall,
mind too with that 205, seeing what kind of veteran tight end you can get, but like a young guy. So if somebody on their team has
Fant,
Cole Kmet, Irv Smith, Tommy Tremble, like a bunch
Fant,
of dudes like that are all kind of like dart throws, and you wanted to send that 205 away for Cole Kmet and Tommy Tremble to get two, shots at a starting tight end in the future, I don't mind doing something like that instead of just taking McBride with that pick as well.
yeah, and I was also thinking maybe like a Noah Fant type, somebody scared about that Seattle landing spot. You capitalize, you get a young ascending talent like that. So I wouldn't mind making that move. But overall, she also says here, again, over the roster cap by 4, kind of has an asterisk on some players that she would be considering on cutting. So I mean, if we're looking here, it's pretty straightforward to me. Those 3 running backs that you outlined, 100%. I mean, I'm most likely
I'd
just
keep Chuba Hubbard personally.
oh,
I think
Chuba
I
Hubbard was
would
in
go.
there. I
Yeah,
thought
I
that's a
would
Chris
go
Carson.
Patrick, Justin Jackson, Jeff
Yeah.
Wilson, Cole Beasley. That would be the ones that I would
Um,
cut.
and I would rather Cole Beasley than Chris Carson. So I mean, sub that out. I thought Chris Carson was the one that was asterisk, by the way. But either way,
Oh,
with
okay,
Chris
yeah, that's fair.
Carson,
Yeah, I didn't even notice Chris Carson's name there. I wouldn't cut him just yet. I'd rather cut Cole Beasley because I think he's an older player and he could sign with another team, but I'm not really all that excited. I guess you're weaker at wide receiver though, so that kind of does make
that's
sense
why.
if you want to go with Carson instead. She also has a couple things listed here. Currently shopping Dalvin Cook for 2 1s. I mean,
Yes.
I don't care what class. If that's in 2025, I don't give a shit. Two
Yeah.
first round picks for Dalvin Cook is pretty easy decision for me to make. She said this is an orphan team, took over mid 2021, first dynasty place, 5th. Decided to rebuild to be a contender very soon. Basically, please grade the trades, potential trades, what to do for the draft, and then thinking wide receiver heavy. So overall, I think we covered pretty much everything with this team. I would just continue. You're building out some value in a pretty good way here. So
100%.
just hammer wide receivers this year. Got a good draft class for it, and see if you can collect on Dalvin Cook, like you mentioned.
Yep. No, for sure. I would agree with you there. And I mean, that sounds like Christmas morning here in Dalvin Cook for 2 first-round picks. Take the picks every day in that scenario. But transitioning off of Briana's team, we can go on to the next team. That's going to be from Kurt, aka Paco, from the YouTube live stream chat. A little shout out there. A big supporter of the channel. We see him in almost every live stream. So wanted to give that shout out because I mean you've earned it at this point. He says here it's a 1 quarterback dynasty team. He has 12 team PPR. You see here in a 1 quarterback league, Trey Lance is your main building block at the quarterback position. Running backs, your main piece is J.K. Dobbins. Tony Pollard's a nice little depth piece for the future, not necessarily a number 2 running back. Wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup. I mean, I love all the Cowboy represent. He is a Cowboys fan because you also see Cole Kmet and Dalton Schultz here, as well as the 104, the 203, the 209, 302, 304 this year, 2023 first, and all of his picks in 2024. So he kind of mentions here his plan is to go all in after I cash in on those first. And would that be the move to make, in your opinion? So I'll let you talk about the team and I'll let you think what are your thoughts on his kind of plan there?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a shallow dynasty league to me, at least just based
I
on the
just listed the
roster.
relevant names. I just listed the
Right.
relevant
Okay,
names.
so mostly fodder for the rest of his pieces
Yeah,
here. 104, obviously, you're going to get one of those top wide receivers, potentially Kenneth Walker, if you want to go in that direction. But I would lean with whatever one of London, Wilson, or Burks falls to you at that point. Again, 203, 209, you should be able to get a solid wide receiver prospect there. I'd probably be looking to hammer wide receivers this year. You have 3 firsts in next year's class, like you said. You should be able to get a running back or 2 in that class, and should I go all in after I cash these first? Probably not. I would say that your team's going to be young. It's going to be
Agreed.
Not a team that's in its prime necessarily, and your building blocks will still be in their prime by then too. So you don't really have to worry about that. I'd probably just be looking to make these picks, take the best player available, build out as solid of a team as I can. If you need to cash out on somebody, by all means, whether it's a pick or a player, and just continue to build this thing out. I probably wouldn't be too hasty to say I'm going to go all in after I use all my 2023 first, because you need a lot to break right? Obviously, your
Yep.
rookies will have to come in right away and perform at a high level. And if you have the 101, the 103, and the 105, then there's a good chance that could happen. But at the same time, you don't want to, put the cart before the horse here. I would just continue to build out this team. 2024 would probably be my first competing window.
Yep. No, I agree here. He also has, or I agree with everything you said. He also has a potential trade here. So, a player in his league, an owner in his league, is very, very interested in J.K. Dobbins, and he kind of wanted to run a scenario by us because he said that this guy's willing to quote unquote overpay from a market value for Dobbins. He says, uh, refuse to accept his current offer of 307 and a 2023 first, second, and third. And he also says here he wants him bad enough to the point that maybe I can get this trade offer as well as James Conner attached. So right off the bat, I just want to say if you can get that package along with James Conner and then potentially flip Conner in season when he's producing, top 15 type of RB numbers, I'd be more than willing to take this deal.
Yeah, honestly, like I wouldn't even need that third in that trade offer that you said. I love J.K. Dobbins. I'm the J.K. Dobbins guy. A 2023 first and a second round pick is enough for me to move off of J.K. Dobbins, especially in your situation as a rebuilding team. So that first offer, I would just take that. Honestly, 307, 2023 first, a 2023 second, a 2023 third. I would just take that. Get J.K. Dobbins, get that RB production off your team, tank your pick for next year, and hopefully you got a shot at Bijan Robinson or JSN or Jordan Addison with a lot of your picks. So I would definitely say that I would probably just take the first offer. Yeah, James Conner's interesting because he's going to have more value in season, but it's a good enough offer that you have initially on the table. So I'm just cool taking that.
Yeah, no, definitely fair. But overall, I mean, if you can add a fourth 2023 first to this team, really dominate that draft, monopolize that draft, and heck, if somebody's dying for one of the pieces, maybe you can even parlay that into plus capital in 2024. You have a lot of leverage, you have a lot of flexibility in the situation you're kind of putting yourself in. So just keep your head up, keep grinding, because I mean, I think you're in a good spot here in terms of your rookie picks. I'm not sure. Again, you haven't mentioned if you've used them yet, but 104, best overall wide receiver at this point, especially given the fact that you're not ready to compete right now. If you add, a Drake London or a Traylon Burks or a Garrett Wilson to that core, I really like that build, if you will, that structure, if you will, in terms of making this thing for the long term. 203, 209, 302, 304, just best player available. I mean, 203, if David Bell's there, obviously a value. 209, 302, 304, just maybe, you take stabs on some of those, day three running backs that land in an opportunity situation. Your Tyler Algier, your Damian Pierce, maybe if he falls. Maybe you mix in a Trey McBride pick. Either way, I would just kind of attack this from a BPA standpoint.
Yep, exactly. It's how you always want to do it for the most part in any kind of situation, but especially when you're
Big
rebuilding
facts.
and you have zero team needs because you're not even trying to compete. That puts you in the best possible position. So let's get into the next team here. We have the DERF 1992 12 team Superflex PPR team. Rodgers, Tua, and Baker at quarterback. Taylor, Najee, Kareem Hunt, etc. at running back. Justin Jefferson, Chase Claypool, Brandon Cooks, etc. at wide receiver. Travis Kelce is his main tight end. Does have a 2023 first that's projected early next year, has a bunch of seconds as well. But this year he's got the 107, 301, 308, and 401. So we covered this team for him a couple months ago in like February or so. And he made a bunch of moves since then. And this is what he's dealing with now. And he basically just wants to hear our opinion on what to do with 107. He's very tempted to take Kenny Pickett because he doesn't love his quarterback situation. I would agree with you. You got an old, 38-year-old quarterback heading out your core, and then Tua, who's a bit of a question mark, and then a QB3 who's not even a starter right now. So I would say that Kenny Pickett at 107 is not necessarily what I would do. What I would do, and what we've kind of talked about in the past, is see what kind of veteran quarterback you can get with the 107.
Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, guys like that you could probably get, from a cheaper relative market standpoint. That's the move I would make, especially considering the fact, I mean, looking at your running backs, Taylor, Najee, Hunt, et cetera there. Wide receivers, obviously, you got a guy like Justin Jefferson heading that group there. I would be looking to transition in that way. I would say, too, with those other picks that you have. I would kind of want more depth at my wide receiver position because right now you're currently relying upon, after Jefferson and Cooks, who should probably be, locked and loaded. I mean, Jefferson's going to be a locked and loaded top 5 receiver. Cooks is probably going to be a locked and loaded top 24 to 30 wide receiver at minimum. After that, I mean, I like Claypool's talent, but there's a murky situation there in Pittsburgh. And then after him, you don't really have many true building blocks at your wide receiver position. So overall, what would you think about that?
Yeah, this team is kind of in a bit of a tough spot
Weird
too,
one.
which is why I would not probably just prioritize getting a QB3 because
Yeah, agree.
you will need to stay healthy to compete this year because your team is pretty thin. I would say it doesn't have a whole lot of depth at quarterback, at running back. Like at running back is your deepest position, and you really only have 3 guys that can compete with you, and then you have a 33-year-old tight end, a 38-year-old QB1. So I would say you're probably competing for this season, and then you're probably going to be transitioning this team next year if you don't win the championship. At least that's
Absolutely.
the way that I would probably handle it. And even this season, if you're you get midway through the season, you're 2-5 and a contender wants to buy Kelsey or Aaron Rodgers, like they're gone in a heartbeat
Yeah,
for me. You do
100%.
have a good amount of capital next year, which is a good thing, obviously, so that you can accelerate your rebuild a little bit. But if somebody you get to the week 7 or something and you're 2-5, and somebody wants to give you a 2023 first for Aaron Rodgers because he's playing at another MVP caliber type of season, I'd probably just do it at that point. Just build out your team for the future because I mean, things could go wrong for this team pretty quick too. Because if Tua plays like garbage this year, they're going to be looking for a new quarterback. If Kelsey, gets hurt this year, he's going to have no value on the market. And outside of Jefferson, Taylor, and Najee, you don't really have a whole lot of building blocks long term at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of volatility here. Things can break right. Again, you have the superstar talent that can win you weeks, but the problem is if you face one injury, you're in the mud. Like you are in the mud. And if you're in that position, if you're in a position where one injury or one, bust performance, if you will, during the season can tank your year, that I wouldn't consider that being, in that top rarefied contender air. Because there's so much volatility to the point that you can win the championship. I agree. Like you have a couple really, really nice pieces here, a couple really superstar level players, but anything happens, I am tearing it down.
Yeah. And to answer your original question, what to do with the 107, in your situation, I'd probably go with a guy like Chris Olave or Sky Moore, somebody who
Yes.
should give you some good production early on, but who is also a rookie wide receiver. I probably wouldn't be looking towards Jamison Williams with this team just because he might not be on the field right away. You have one shot at this, I would say. One more
One
year that you
chance.
can potentially compete. If you wanted to trade your 301 or your 308 for like Mitch Trubisky, Marcus Mariota, somebody that could be a serviceable QB3 for you for this season, that'd probably be the extent of what I'm looking to do at the quarterback position. But Kenny Pickett at 107, maybe you can trade down to like 110, 111. And at that point, I'm okay taking Kenny Pickett, but I'm not going to pass on, Chris Olave or anybody like that in favor of Kenny Pickett just because I need a quarterback 3, because I do think those guys are a tier above him in talent. So bit of a tough spot for the Durf here. Hopefully you can things can break right for you. But let's move on to Stonequist's team, and I'll let you take it away with his.
For sure here. So he mentions here it's a one quarterback, 10 team full PPR league. So in a one quarterback league, the fact that you have, Kyler Murray, Matthew Stafford, and Zach Wilson, very, very loaded core there. Running back, CMC, Swift, ETN, etc. there. Wide receiver, Godwin, Pittman, Amon-Ra, Judy, Bateman, etc. And then at tight end, you have Kelsey, Schultz, and Njoku, as well as also having the 101, the 108, the 207, the 306, and a boatload of future capital as well that it looks here, multiple thirds, all of your picks aside from your 2023 and 2023 first. So overall, I mean, this is clearly a team in contending position. He mentions here that he has a potential trade on the table. He would be giving the 101 and the 306 in exchange for Deontay, Amari Cooper, and CEH. I'm just going to tell you right now, that is not enough for me to move off of Brees Hall.
Yeah, Deontay versus the 101 is a conversation. I would say it's pretty close, but Amari Cooper and CEH, do they move the needle a little bit?
No.
Sure, but do they move the needle enough for me? I would rather, instead of, if you want to move off the 101 and Deontay Johnson's part of that package, see if he has like a little bit more of an appealing one piece to go with that. Take Amari Cooper and CEH out of that deal. If he has another young wide receiver, if he has another young running back that you can get instead of Amari Cooper and CEH, I would rather do that. But like Danny said, I think I would probably just stick and pick Brees Hall.
Yep, for sure. And he also has a couple potential trades that he can do. So he would be giving in one scenario Chris Godwin, Travis Etienne, and Nico Collins in exchange for Javonte. So basically Godwin and Etienne for Collins. Would you be willing to give up basically, a top 20 wide receiver in Dynasty and top 15 running back to go up and get that superstar running back in Javonte Williams?
Given the current structure of your team, probably not. I would say Godwin is more important to your team right now as like probably your second or best wide receiver. To the point that Javonte, who's great, obviously, but from a contending standpoint, he's competing for your RB2 with Swift at that point. And from a team construction standpoint, I think that you're probably fine just leaving what you have. And overall value too, I would say that's two really solid pieces that you're giving up for one guy that still has yet to prove that he's going to be a superstar as well. So I probably would just hold with Godwin and ETN, but I understand the move if you wanted to make it. But you're also going to be adding Breece Hall to this team, right? So
Yeah.
Your running back core is going to be very, very loaded if you were to make a trade like that. But I typically don't like to build my entire team around a loaded running back core, and you'd be really hamstrung at wide receiver if you made that move.
Yep. No, I agree with that. I would hold your side there, given the structure of your team. You also list here that there's another potential trade that he can give the 101, Godwin, Bateman, and a 2023 second for Chase. Yeah, I love Jamar Chase, but that is too much.
That's a haul. That's a hefty package right there. If you think about it this way, Breece Hall in a startup is going about the late second round. He is the 101.
Round and a half after him, yeah.
Right. So Chase is going about, mid to late first round. Would you give up Godwin, Bateman, and a 2023 second to go from the late second to the late first?
And again, I think that's a little too, rough way to think about it in terms of relative value, because I mean, there are tiers that you work within. However, I completely agree with you with the fact that even if, you're moving up for a quarterback here, like that would be a fucking price to pay. But the fact that you're doing it again, as much as I love Jamar Chase, it's not like he's Kyler Murray. It's not like he's Lamar Jackson. It's not like he's Justin Herbert. He's still a wide receiver relative to market value long term. Although he is, a locked and loaded franchise cornerstone piece, like he doesn't move the needle like an elite quarterback would. And the fact that I wouldn't be willing to pay that for an elite quarterback just kind of shows you that it's too much for Chase.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say that I just remembered, this is a one quarterback league, so Jamar Chase is actually a top 2-3.
That is actually fair
in a startup, so he is probably worth a little bit more in a one quarterback league because you don't have those elite quarterbacks. But still, I probably think this is a little too much to give up with the buzz around Bateman. He's got a lot of value right now. Godwin obviously has a pretty good amount of value, and Breece Hall obviously has a lot of value. And a 2023 second is not nothing. So I'd probably just hold pat. Again, you're in a pretty good position to just spend your picks and compete this year. You spend that 101 on Breece Hall, 108, just take the best receiver available, most likely. 207 and 306, best player available as well. And you should be ready to just go into the season. Kyler Murray, CMC, Swift, Godwin, Pittman, Kelsey, and then, Breece Hall, ETN, and your flexes with, Amon-Ra, Judy, and Bateman kind of mixing in there as well. I think you're probably in a great spot to compete this year. Even in a 10-teamer, I think you probably have one of the best teams in your league.
Yep. No, I would agree with you with that. Just, keep your head down, keep grinding, and you will be fine here. But we can transition to the next team that's going to be from Lumber. And you guys can see the team here. It's a 10-team Superflex PPR league with a tight end premium. Quarterbacks, Justin Herbert, Zach Wilson, Davis Mills is your main guys there. Wide receivers, Terry McLaurin, Devontae Smith, Amon-Ra, Laviska, etc. there. Running backs, you got DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, AJ Dillon in particular. And then at tight end, you kind of have, a young, talented duo with Fant and Komet, as well as also having the 102, the 202, the 302, 309, and the 402 here. He actually lists that between the time that he made the submission and the time that we're recording this, he actually did have his rookie draft. And in terms of the selections, he was able to get Drake London at that 102, exactly what we would do. And he ended up getting Dotson at the 202. And he also acquired another 2023 second and first. So we'll get into that trade that he actually did. He traded away Terry McLaurin and AJ Dillon and received back in return the 110, which resulted in him getting Sky Moore, a 2023 first round pick, a 2023 second round pick, and Donovan Peoples-Jones. So right off the bat, I absolutely love this move.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could pull some shit like that in my league. I like Terry McLaurin, as much as I like Terry McLaurin, like a 2023 first and a second is enough for me to move off of Terry McLaurin. I would rather
Easily.
have, Sky Moore than AJ Dillon. And then you also get, DPJ as kind of a sweetener to that deal. So I really do love that move for you. I think you netted positive, and obviously we don't know where that first is going to be, but if it ends up being, early to mid, then you made out like a bandit in that trade. And then he also says potential deals I should be looking at making with my win now guys and grade my draft so far. So his draft, I would say, is, an A. It's exactly what I would do.
Yeah.
Drake London at 102,
Heartbeat.
Sky Moore at 110, Jahan Dotson at 202. I probably can't give you a better grade than that. And then, like you said, he is in a rebuild. What kind of deals should he be making to get some of his, contending pieces off of his roster? As far as your roster is concerned, there's a couple guys that, stand out. Like you have Miles Sanders types and, guys like that. But those guys are going to be more likely valuable in season if they have any,
Yep.
kind of fantasy relevance. We'll know at that point in time. So as far as those like contending pieces, there's probably not a whole lot you can do with them as it currently stands. I'd probably just be looking to go into the season. You made your draft picks, you're filling out your roster, and if things break right for you, I wouldn't be shocked if you actually could compete this year as like a playoff team. Probably not like the best team in your league, but like make the playoffs, sneak into the back as like the 5 or 6 seed, and play with house money this year. But you got obviously a very young team, a team that is ascending, and hopefully if you can hit on some of those picks, London, Sky, Dotson, that wide receiver core could be really, really young and really dangerous coming into the next couple of years.
Yep. No, I would agree with you there. Overall, just keep staying the course, and yeah, you have a very good young nucleus to this team. So good work there from Lumber. We can transition to the next team, and I'll let you take it away with Raggy Shoggers and his one quarterback non PPR 12-team league.
Yeah, so pretty simple question here. He just wants to know what to do with his picks. So in a one quarterback, you got Mahomes and Lance. Doesn't get much better than that. Joe Mixon,
Yeah.
Dalvin Cook, Javonte Williams, J.K. Dobbins is your top running backs. Godwin, Darnell Mooney, Christian Kirk, Jerry Judy, etc. At wide receiver. George Kittle is your tight end. So kind of a win now team. I would say you look at the running backs. You got Mixon, Dalvin Cook heading up the core outside of the young guys with Javonte and Dobbins. At your picks at the 103. I'm probably looking towards adding, wide receiver most likely
Yeah.
because the running back core is already pretty loaded. The one thing I would say though is before your draft, see what you can get for Joe Mixon or Dalvin Cook. Because if you could sell Dalvin Cook for a 2023 first, and then at 103 you want to grab Kenneth Walker to help kind of supplement that production, I don't think that's a terrible idea. Or you could probably just be fine going into the season with Joe Mixon, Javonte Williams, and J.K. Dobbins and
Yeah.
be fine from that perspective and add a wide receiver. But that's kind of a side note. Just if you left the team the way it is and spent your picks, I'd probably be looking towards Garrett Wilson, Treylon Burks, or Drake London with that first pick. And then at the 110, typically you're going to see, Sky Moore, David Bell, Jahan Dotson. One of those guys will be on the board for you. The way I'd kind of pick them, like I said, Sky Moore, Jahan Dotson, and David Bell would be how I'd rank those guys. And then at the 408, I mean, take whatever shot you feel like taking. You have all your 2023 picks. So win now team, again, always looking to sell Dalvin Cook. If you're a win now team, I'm less likely to sell Joe Mixon because I do think he's going to probably be pretty good again this year, but he does have a lot of market value. So I'd also float him out on the open market as well, because if you can, theoretically down tier from a win now perspective, get a little bit younger at the position, pick up a 2023 first, I'm always going to be looking to do something like that. But I mean, given that you have a competitive win now team, I don't mind just holding those guys either.
Yep. No, I agree with you there. I mean, you are in a very good spot here. Yeah, just look, 103, pending what you do with Mixon and Cook, that's either going to be the best receiver available, or heck, I mean, you mentioned, flipping them for future capital. If you can flip, Cook or Mixon into, an elite young wide receiver, I'd be looking to do that. Like if you can get, a couple nice young wide receiver pieces that can still help contribute to your win now, structure of your team, I'd be looking to do that. Then, 103, if you want to add Kenneth Walker and you have a nucleus of Javonte, Walker, and Dobbins to compete this year while also adding elite talent at the wide receiver position, you could even further your team in terms of being that top contender. So, yeah, no, that I'd be looking to gauge your market there because I know in a lot of leagues, a lot of people have a high value of Mixon and Cook. So if you can get, similarly, ADP wise wide receivers in that range, as well as getting younger and projecting more value long term, go into it.
Yeah, I'll give you some names because Danny was clearly forgetting them right there. DJ
Yeah.
Moore, Deontay Johnson,
Yeah.
Elijah Moore, any of the young rookie wide receivers. If you can flip Joe Mixon into the 104 or something and add, Garrett Wilson or Treylon Burks or something like that, anybody in that territory would be who I'd be looking to get for Joe Mixon and Dalvin Cook, especially if these guys are more, casual players. You might even be able to get better receivers than the ones that I just mentioned. So let's get into the final team of the video, Metzger's team. I'll let you take it away with him.
See a 10-team league with a 1.7 tight end premium in a full PPR, which is very, very exact. He says he had the startup earlier this winter, and we just actually had our rookie draft. So overall, he kind of wanted us to outline his team and the moves that he made both in the startup and in the rookie draft. So you guys can see he ended up shipping in the startup draft the 410 and the 501 for the 205. And when we contextualize the names that were actually involved, he basically ended up trading J.K. Dobbins and Deontay Johnson in exchange for DeAndre Swift. So what are your thoughts on this move there, Corey?
I like the Dobbins side of it personally. I
I
like
agree.
Dobbins. Everyone knows I love Dobbins, but the difference between Dobbins and Swift to me is a lot smaller than Deontay Johnson. That's a pretty big piece to give up to get there. And just in a startup value trade, would I want to trade down from 2.5 to get 410 and 501 if it was me trading down from the 2.5? Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I would love to get a package like that because I know in that fourth round and early fifth round, you're going to get guys like that, Dobbins, Deontay Johnson types, DJ Moore, whatever. Like that territory of receivers and running back talent is pretty solid still. It's not like you're giving up, going down to like the 6th, 7th, 8th round where it drops off a little bit more. So yeah, I personally do like the side of the 410 and the 5-1.
Yep, for sure. He also listed here that he dealt his 2023 first in the startup as well as Noah Fant, basically at the 10-10, in exchange for the 602, which he used on David Montgomery. I mean, looking at this trade, I would personally say that the 2023 first is probably around a round 5, round 6 pick in the startup. So if you dealt that in the 10-10 for the 602, yeah, I'm not a big fan of the value.
Yeah, me and Danny are also like polar opposite. Like the strategy that you took, which was go up and get the studs, go up and get, win now type of pieces using your 2023 first. We're typically taking the opposite side
Yeah.
of that spectrum where we're trading down and taking people's 2023 first and letting them give us mid-round picks for the high-end picks. So, yeah, I think I do lean the other way on both of the trades you made, unfortunately, but you still have built out a pretty good team regardless of that. So he also talks about during the preseason that he made some trades, Nick Chubb, David Montgomery, Chris Carson, Davis Mills. So you trade away all those guys by the looks of it in exchange for the 102, the 109, 301, Darnell Mooney, and I don't know who that last name is.
It didn't really say there on the screenshot or the pick I was sent, but either way, even if those,
I think
we'll
it's
say it's
Jacoby
J.
Myers. I think it's Jacoby Myers.
If it's Jacoby Myers, I mean, heck, I mean, that's about an early 3, late 2 type of value there. So we'll just consider that. But even if you didn't even get Jacoby Myers, I really, really like this move for you. I mean, I would prefer 102 over probably Chubb and
I'd say
Monty, to be
Chubb,
honest.
Carson, and Mills. I'd rather have the 102, and then I'd rather
Yeah.
have the 109 and the 301 than Monty, or the 109 and Darnell Mooney than Montgomery,
Yeah.
like pretty easily. So yeah, I really like. Again, you didn't necessarily do the greatest job in the startup in terms of those trades, but you definitely made up for it with these moves here. So I really, really love that trade. I think you got a lot of good value there.
Yep, for sure. He also notes here that during the draft, he also made a few moves. So he traded away the 102, which was used on Kenneth Walker, as well as the 107, which was used on Sky Moore, and he ended up going up and getting Brees Hall. I love Brees Hall. That's a big price.
Yeah, if it's Walker and Moore for Brees, then I don't mind that. If it
If
was
it was
London and
London and
Moore for
more,
Brees, then I'd
yeah,
probably take the 102, 107 side. But if you just
agreed,
told me straight up Walker and Moore for Brees, I think it's a little
agreed.
bit more, digestible. But if that was London, I'd probably take the 102 and 107 side.
Agreed with you there. Yeah, again, the guy used it on Kenneth Walker, but you substitute Drake London's name in there, I would want that side. But I mean, if we're talking about startup value, Walker's probably, around 5-ish type of pick. Sky Moore's probably, like around 7-ish, around 8-ish type of pick. And obviously, I mean, we know Brees Hall is the back of the second. So from a startup value standpoint, you made out well. It's just if you ended up using that pick on Drake London, who we've seen kind of edge on that 3-4 turn, it would have been a little steep.
Yeah, well, in the startup that we're doing with our tone setters right now, Drake London went, I believe, at like the 3.8. So
308, yeah.
he's still he's pretty high up there, and it's like a less than a round difference between where he and Brees Hall went. So that would be a pretty big discrepancy as far as that trade goes. The other trade that he has here, he has the 109. Looks like he gave away the 109 and Tyler Boyd, and he got Zeke and Amari. Wait, hold on.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, Zeke. Okay, so Zeke and Amari Cooper in exchange for the 109 and Tyler Boyd. I mean, I'll let you handle this as the resident Cowboys fan.
Yeah, I mean, when you contextualize that he took James Cook with the pick, he kind of screwed that up. But this is probably about relative value. I mean, I'd probably peg Amari and Zeke as both early second round relative value.
Which
So
is where we actually value James Cook. So I would say that's
so
probably a pretty fair trade. Again, thankfully the guy took James Cook with that trade with that pick, but had he picked, Jameson
Sky
Williams,
Moore,
Chris
yeah,
Olave or something, Sky Moore went at 107. So
yeah,
if Jameson Williams or Chris Olave goes there, I'd probably take that side over the Zeke and Amari Cooper side. But I don't mind the Zeke and Amari side there. And then the final trade here, you got 2023 second, 2023 third for Kenny Pickett. So that move I'm fine with. You give away a second and a third in exchange for a first round quarterback that ended up falling. It's a 10-team league, so it's understandable why he fell a little bit, but I do like that, assuming this is a super flex league, which I believe it is. So Kenny Pickett there at the 202. I think that's fine.
Yep. But yeah, he just wanted to shout out, Danny's boy Mechie. This guy's gonna be terrorizing NFL players just like he was terrorizing the OVFL back in the day. So shout out there. Hopefully he can develop into a main piece of your team there. It'll also be a nice little flex piece from my standpoint.
Yeah, overall, you got a pretty strong team. I would say that, there was definitely some moves that we disagreed with, some moves that we agreed with, but well set up, I would say, to make at least a run this season. Looking at your starting lineup, you should have, a pretty good Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers as your top two quarterbacks, DeAndre Swift, Breece Hall, Ezekiel Elliott as your top three guys, AJ Brown, Mike Evans, Mike Williams, Cooper, Mooney, number of other guys there, and Mark Andrews. So I would say competitive wise, you should be in a good spot to try and hoist a championship this year.
Yep. No, I agree. I mean, this is a very loaded team and go out and compete. I mean, the one thing I will say is you mentioned you traded up for Kenny Pickett. If you can transition, given the structure of your team and transition, Pickett. I mean, we keep throwing these names around, but transition Pickett into a Derek Carr or transition Pickett into a Kirk Cousins. I mean, this team can flat out win the whole thing this year. If you can get, sustained top 15 quarterback production out of, one of those veteran signal callers as opposed to Kenny Pickett, I'd look to do that. But aside from that, I mean, this is a very, very well-built team.
Yeah, I agree. I think the other thing too is, I know you just traded for him, but I would see what you can get for Ezekiel Elliott, because I just he's just a walking eyesore for any team for me. So if you can transition him into a young running back like ETN who hasn't proven it yet, because in more casual leagues, people they're just gonna gravitate towards the devil they know. So if you can trade Ezekiel Elliott and maybe you have to throw in a pick or something like that to get off of him into Travis Etienne or somebody like that, I still would be looking to make a move like that. But that's pretty much the only thing that stands out to me aside from just going out and trying to win. All right, so that is the end of the video, guys. If you made it this far, comment down below any of your thoughts, any trade questions, dynasty questions. We will get to them. Hit the like button while you're down there and subscribe to the channel if you are new as well. Really appreciate all the support you guys show on this series, on our channel in general. So definitely appreciate you guys. Again, if you want to be a member of Dynasty Decisions or a part of Dynasty Decisions episodes in the future, patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange will help you skip the line. Make sure your question gets answered. And if you want to just join the queue, we will try and run a doubleheader next week because we did miss a week because of the NFL draft. So send your questions in Twitter, Discord, etc. Links are down below in the description. Peace out, guys. We'll talk to you soon.